What's up, everyone? I'm Helena Alamu, and welcome to another episode of the DNA Download, where we explain the science of genetics so you can live in the know. I'm hearing more and more of these really heartwarming stories about people discovering new family members through a DNA testing service, and I've been wondering, how do scientists predict these family relationships from our DNA? Joining me today to explain the science behind it all is Lindsay Grove, Senior Product Specialist on the Customer Care Team at 23andMe. Thanks for being here, Lindsay.
Thanks for having me.
So, people who participate in 23andMe's DNA services often discover relatives, some they knew about, others maybe they didn't. So could you talk a little bit about how these connections are made?
Absolutely. So at 23andMe, if you choose to opt into the DNA Relatives feature, we'll show you a list of 23andMe customers who share identical segments of DNA with you. These are people who share common ancestors with you. They're your DNA relatives.
Huh, that's so cool. So how do you go about determining whether or not two people are related?
Well, we look at the length and number of DNA segments that you share. So close relatives usually share long stretches of DNA, while distant relatives share shorter DNA segments. And then we also look at the total percentage of DNA shared, and based on all that information, we can make a prediction about your relationship.
Okay, so if I get half of my DNA from my mom and half of my DNA from my dad, you can tell that I share about 50% of my DNA with each of them. Based on this, you'd predict that they're my parents, right?
Yeah, exactly. Although if you have a brother or a sister, you also share approximately 50% of your DNA with them. So we have to look at more than just the percentage to predict the relationship. So in this case, we can look at the pattern of shared DNA between you and your parents versus you and your siblings to predict which person is which.
That is so cool. So are some relationships harder to identify than others?
Definitely. Certain relationships, like an aunt versus a half-sister, can be difficult to pinpoint based on the percentage of DNA shared alone. So we can provide a prediction, but you may need to combine your DNA knowledge with your personal knowledge of your family's history to see the whole picture.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there ways for me to learn more about these newly discovered DNA relatives?
Totally. You can reach out to your DNA relatives to send messages and request permission to share and compare things like ancestor birthplaces, surnames, and more.
Wow. Okay, but some of that information sounds like it might be sensitive. What do you do if you just aren't comfortable sharing that information with your DNA relatives?
You can simply choose not to. We respect your privacy at 23andMe, and the DNA Relatives feature is completely optional. So unless you choose to opt in, your profile remains hidden and no one can find you. And then if you do choose to opt in, there are a series of privacy safeguards we've put in place that allow you to fine-tune your preferences to match your comfort level.
So it's totally my choice.
Yeah, exactly. And like you mentioned earlier, many 23andMe customers do choose to participate and have connected with their DNA relatives, and it's always so much fun hearing their family reunion stories.
Oh, I bet. Well, that is all the time we have for today. I'll have to start exploring my DNA relatives like now. The curiosity is driving me crazy. Thanks again for being with us, Lindsay, and see you next time on the DNA Download.